Babylon is a 2022 American epic period comedy drama film written and directed by Academy Award winner Damien Chazelle, best known for Whiplash, La La Land and First Man. The film stars Margot Robbie as Nellie, Diego Calva as Manny and Brad Pitt as Jack, amongst a slew of other big name actors who have smaller roles in the film to make up the ensemble cast. The film chronicles the shift from silent films towards more speaking roles in the 20s and into the 30s in Hollywood, and how these characters deal with that change. And the film hasn't done as well at the box office as I'm sure they wanted it to. It cost roughly $80 million to make, and at present it has only earned back $16 million. So a bit of a hit there for Chazelle and the studios. But there are reasons for that. The film is very ambitious, with it perhaps not hitting the high notes that it really wanted to and that it was aiming for, as it exists in the realm of good but not great throughout its entire runtime, which is exceptionally long, and to not comment on it would definitely be a disservice to all the viewers. At 3 hours and 8 minutes, there is so much for everyone who watches the film to take in, to digest, to break down, to understand and to follow. And I'm not really in a rush to watch the film again, and considering the amount of times that I've watched La La Land and Whiplash, it is quite surprising to me to not be in that mindset of already thinking about when I'll watch this again. It is away from the story that the film truly shines. The casting was well chosen for what the film wanted to portray. It's shot exceptionally well. The production design is immaculate, and unsurprisingly, the score is quite euphonious, with it being jazz based in much the same way that Whiplash and La La Land were. It does feel like Justin Hurwitz has found his voice or his sound, rather, when it comes to this type of feature, to focus on jazz. With, I'm inclined to believe, some of the main theme from this film adopting some of the indicators that we're seeing in Mia and Sebastian's theme from La La Land itself. Robbie is electric in this film, to the point that I honestly have to say I couldn't see how anyone else would have been able to portray the character with the confidence that she had. Originally it was believed that Emma Stone was set to star in this feature until scheduling conflicts caused her to drop out. While I love Stone as an actress, I don't know if she could have captured Manny and the audience's attention in the way that Robbie did. From the minute that you see her and the way that she acts throughout the entirety of the film, you do want to see where she goes and how she ends up, because with the theme of the film itself being all about change, you know that from the beginning to the end all the characters are going to go through an exceptional journey that takes them from where they were to where they end up, and how that has an effect on everyone around you as well as yourself. The change from the silent films to speaking does cause a big effect on these bigger name actors from back in the day. Brad Pitt's Jack, Margot Robbie's Nellie. One hit their peak in silent films and one was approaching it. Yet both struggled then when speaking became a key part of all roles. Despite the fact that Jack was a driving force behind the development of speaking pictures in Hollywood and wanted to try and get ahead of the curve, this was difficult for him to do, which ends up causing a loss of identity for a lot of our characters, to the point that we even see Manny affected as he becomes more Americanized in his way of speaking, his attitude and everything that he involves himself with. He, at one point, while trying to enamour himself to Nellie and the elites, explains that he doesn't visit his family, who are also based in LA, due to not feeling like he has a connection with them, and he even identifies himself as Spanish rather than Mexican at one point, again to seem more exotic or mysterious to these people that he's trying to get employment from. And it's interesting to see the effect that this has on Nellie and Manny's relationship as they progress further and further into the film, and the expectation that Nellie finds herself under, being attractive and being capable to act in the silent films, the way that everyone anticipates her to become a huge speaking star, yet that is something she continues to struggle with throughout the film. Another key element of this film is people trying to outrun their mortality and dealing with going from being somebody to being nobody. We have Jack Conrad, who comes to understand that as speaking roles get larger and larger, he's going to go from A-list to C and D-list star, and he just gets used to pad out casts in other films. And this is something that begins to affect him deeply with regard to his sense of himself, and starting to struggle with the idea that as he ages, he can no longer do what he used to do, and he will be taken over by those younger actors and younger characters who come into place in all of these films. It comes to a head when he finds out about the death of a close friend, and he does react for no more than a minute and a half. He's with his current wife, and he's struggling to comprehend how his friend is just no longer around. But after that 90 seconds, he just goes back to being his unflappable self. Like, he goes back to focusing on the film he's trying to audition for, and he doesn't allow himself to truly feel the emotions that are going through him. Which leads to a conversation that he has with film critic Eleanor about an article that she went on to write about him. And it gives the film a bit of poignancy, and the most accurate scene I think I've seen portrayed in a film for both reality and fiction. Eleanor explains to Jack that he needs to remember that while he's going to be ushered out of the cinema scene over the coming years, if not instantaneously, he will continue to live on the screens for generations to come. There will be kids in 30 or 40 years time that will go to watch film and they'll see Jack Conrad up on the screen, and that should fill him with a happiness that is unmatched. And it reminds me of how in reality as well, the likes of Brad Pitt and Gary Oldman, Anthony Hopkins, all of those, they will be seen for years upon years to come, and they'll never be forgotten for as long as people have access to their films. And it is something that is easy to overlook when you're in the scenario, but it's to keep a sense of perspective for your whole life, that things can always be bigger than you, even when it's not going great. The party scenes are beautiful, memorable, and the debauchery involved in them is probably in line with what went on at the time in that era. With us kind of wishing we were there, because modern life kind of looks a bit tame and boring in comparison. There is a point during some of the filming sequences that we have our camera is filming Nellie's camera, which is filming her, while she's doing one of her first speaking roles. This is used to demonstrate the intricacies of the mechanics that have gone into the creation of a film that is effectively about the creation of more films, if that makes sense. And this shows that the mechanics of some scenes are stronger than the scenes themselves, which is not something we've come to associate with Chazelle over the years. And it does bring up the question to myself and probably others, if this was his first or second feature without the explosive success of La La Land, how much leeway would he have gotten from the studio to create this type of film? And perhaps maybe a shorter leash or more restrictions on what he could create would have been better for the budget, or at least maybe some smaller, more intricate scenes, which is something that we are more used to, could have provided us with context to some elements of the story. The film provides us with what can only be described as a bittersweet ending, as we get to see the characters that we spent the film with, how they're portrayed 20 years into the future, with some of them maybe being more accurate than others, knowing that the inner turmoil that they suffered in that period of the 20s and 30s gives us probably more remorse and pity towards them for the situations that they were in when films are made about their lives later on. And I can't help but imagine that that'll probably be something again that happens in the future. That when they are characters, well in this case real people, being portrayed by others to kind of turn them into characters that we already know, doesn't maybe skew how much we truly feel when we're watching the film. Or maybe I'm just taking away something that isn't there. But Babylon is nominated for a few Oscars coming up now next month, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes. The only thing I feel confident about right now is that has to be winner of Best Score, surely. Justin Hurwitz gets to add another Oscar to that collection of his. And with talk that La La Land will go on and become a Broadway musical, he may be able to add a Tony to that as well. Fingers crossed for him.